You're listening to the latest dose of Bipolar Recorder. This podcast may cause dizziness and blurred vision. Enjoy.
Welcome back to Bipolar Recorder, the podcast where we explore the wild, beautiful stories and minds of people living with severe mental illness. Today's episode is especially significant. When I have a new guest come on, I'm usually not sure exactly what to expect as the conversation unfolds. Meet Dionna, a woman in her early 20s who lives with Bipolar Type I with Psychotic Features. When she first reached out to me about coming on the show, she shared that she had recently been diagnosed with bipolar and hospitalized. Initially, I thought this meant that she had only been living with bipolar for a relatively short period of time. But as we got further into the recording, Dionna explained that she actually has had numerous hospitalizations over the years prior to her formal diagnosis. She went further to explain most of the hospitalizations followed each installment in a long history of suicide attempts, the most recent one being just a couple of weeks before we recorded this episode. So, of course, as far as content warnings go, this conversation goes very in-depth about suicide and suicidal ideation. I tell you all of this because my conversation with Dionna gets particularly deep. At certain points, you can really hear the pain in her voice, but ultimately, her message is one of peace and positivity, and she shares some incredible insight that honestly nearly brought me to tears. So yes, this is a very special and meaningful installment to the podcast series. Get locked in for a very sobering, human, and real journey into the world of bipolar depression and mania. This is Dionna's story. My name is Hunter Keegan. Welcome back to Bipolar Recorder. This evening, I am joined by Dionna, who is a young woman living with, mental health conditions. I wanted to just start by saying that Dionna is from Connecticut. That's where she hails from. And let's turn it over to you for a second so you can introduce yourself to the audience, and we'll just kind of go from there, okay?
Hi, everyone. My name is Dionna. I'm 24. I have a few diagnoses. So I've been struggling with major depressive since I was about 12 years old. Didn't get formally diagnosed till I was about 22. But recently, last December, I was diagnosed with bipolar I disorder, which made my life figure that everything that I was going through made sense now that I have this diagnosis. I've also been diagnosed in the past 2 years with delusion, psychosis, PTSD, and OCD.
Okay. Wow. Yeah, so I have bipolar type I with psychosis too. I've also had issues with OCD in the past. Definitely not easy living with those types of conditions, but you said that when you received the recent bipolar diagnosis, it actually comforted you in a way. It made things make sense. What things started becoming more apparent to you, making more sense after that diagnosis?
So just everything that was constructed in what I was doing, the reckless spending and when I was manic, the depressiveness, the constant suicidality, everything that I was doing, even with the delusions that I was having, everything that was going on in my life for the past 3 years, because I guess you can say that even though I was depressed since I was 12, I started having episodes from bipolar disorder about 4 years ago in 2018, when I first noticed it. And I thought I was bipolar disorder. And I brought it up to my old therapist, who I'm no longer with. And she was like, no, you can't be bipolar. It's depression. And when I finally got diagnosed, it was like everything makes sense now. And but then I started thinking like everything I do is because of bipolar. And then it's like you have to distinguish the line between like what is your diagnosis and like what is just you be like from like just being you. And it's a hard like thin line to go by.
So, who are you without the diagnosis? Who is Dionna as an individual? Can you separate them at this point, or is that still something that you're kind of working through?
I guess you can say that's someone I'm still trying to struggle with and trying to kind of confine with. But I guess you could say that I'm someone who's trying to work on going to school and giving back to my community and the universe. I'm going to school to become a clinical psychologist. I want to open up my own private practice. I love art. I love writing. I love journaling. I love opening up to people, making people happy, laugh. I guess you could say that's it for right now. I don't really know who I am. I feel like the last 2 years of my life, I've been consumed by manic and depressive episodes. That like I honestly, part of me doesn't realize who I am anymore. But recently, I've become stable off new meds that I've been on, and I'm starting to like enjoy life again and be able to like be like a basic 24-year-old.
Nice. Yeah. I mean, 24 years old is still very young. You've got plenty of time to figure it out. I'm still learning about myself at the ripe old age of 28. So I think that learning experience is just an ongoing process that'll last until we die. So I wouldn't put too much pressure on yourself for that. But you said you want to become a psychologist. Are you currently in school?
Yes, I'm actually just enrolled in school. I had to take some time off due to like my recent hospitalizations.
At this point in the conversation, I noticed that Dionna referenced having more than one inpatient hospital stay.
But I'm recently in the May going to be studying psychology at a university. Hopefully one after that I get my PhD, and I'd like to open up my own private practice one day.
Nice. That's an awesome goal to work toward. Is there anything that made you interested in that as an academic field beyond just living with psychological issues of your own?
I think the impact, like my friends. So growing up, I had these great friends that were always there for me. And like when I was suicidal, like took their own measures into their own hands and like got me the help that I needed. And without them, I wouldn't be here. And I feel like just like connection in general with like people is like rich in purr and it saves lives. And I just love connecting with people and getting to know why people are the way that they are. And I think in therapy, you get to learn about people, and you just like understand who we are as people.
Yeah, learning more about other individuals and kind of using that to inform your own perspective. That's super interesting. So my academic background is in psychology. I have a bachelor's degree in psych. And it's a pretty fascinating field. I actually, as a student at Penn State, I didn't focus a whole lot on clinical psychology at the time. I actually had a different subfield that I was focusing on, but I did take a lot of classes related to abnormal psychology and things like that, due to, the different credit requirements for the program that I was in. And it's kind of interesting because at that time I was learning in a textbook about bipolar disorder, but I was also learning through lived experience, which I didn't even recognize at the time. So anyhow, again, awesome goal to be working toward. I wish you all the best in your endeavors with that.
Thank
But
you.
circling back to the bipolar diagnosis, what happened in December of 2021 that changed things? Was there like an inciting incident, or did you start working
Yes,
with a new
there
doctor?
was a very big incident.
This is where the plot really starts to thicken, and Dionna begins sharing more about her history of hospitalizations and suicide attempts. The level of detail she went into actually caught me a bit off guard, and I found myself hanging on her every word.
I was hospitalized. I attempted suicide. I was manic. I wasn't just manic. I was in a mixed state. So basically, I was guilty, having delusions that I was this horrible human being. And I would be in this manic state that like the world would be better off without me. And I was happy singing and dancing around like my room at like 3 a.m. So I went to CVS and I brought some very serious things like some chemicals like laundry detergent, rust cleaner, blades, zip ties. And yes, there's this big old bottle of Tylenol that's worth 245 pills. I purchased that. So then after work at my shift, I texted all of my coworkers that, I'm not a good person. You're all great people. I have to go. Goodbye.
An interesting note to keep in mind here is that the first suicide attempt she discusses actually occurred during a mixed manic episode, not a major depressive episode.
And basically, I sat behind the dumpster at work and I gulped down with some Gatorade 245 pills. Yes, the whole bottle. And I was manic as shit. I mean, it was, now looking back on it, 3 months, because it was December 21st, so it was about 3 months ago.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just unbelievable how like mentally unstable I was. Meanwhile, all my coworkers were crying, calling 911. I was eventually found 5 hours later. If the EMS didn't find me within an hour, I would have had liver failure. That's what they said. I was in the ICU for 4 days. Basically, and then I told the psychiatrist when I was in the ICU that like I thrive off of like thinking about suicide and like all this stuff. And I don't know, after that, like I looked up on like the my chart on like from the hospital stay, and it said bipolar 1 disorder. And now, so it was a year ago, my APRN told me I had bipolar disorder, but it wasn't like officially diagnosed by a psychiatrist till December 21st, 2021. So that incident really put in perspective how severe the illness is.
Yeah.
Like I've done like weird manic things like spending sprees and like just like be like basic depressed and like maybe like some suicide, but that was the most extreme I've ever had a suicide. I had a suicide attempt before. And it just really brought like awareness to me how like just like everything about like the disorder.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's a really intense type of wake up call, really intense kind of incident to have So I had a couple of questions for you, just
Yeah.
based off of all of that intense stuff that you just shared. Um, the first thing I wanted to ask you is you mentioned an APRN. What is an APRN? When Dionna references her APRN, what she's referring to is an advanced practice registered nurse. Psychiatric mental health nurse practitioners, aka PMHNPs, fall under this category of healthcare provider. A psychiatric nurse practitioner is basically a registered nurse with advanced training, licenses, and certifications. They are sort of the bridge between therapists and doctors in that they can prescribe medication. However, they are not full-fledged psychiatrists. Unlike psychiatrists, many NPs, nurse practitioners, also participate in actual therapy work, such as talk therapy, CBT, DBT, EMDR, etc., with their patients. Dionna will explain more about it.
So an APRN is a psychiatric nurse so she's a nurse practitioner with 2 years of psychiatric training. So she does her own private practice like therapy, but at the same time, because she's a nurse practitioner, she can prescribe you meds. So
Right.
she prescribes me meds, but also does my therapy.
Okay.
Normally they're called nurse practitioners.
Yeah, I've worked with nurse practitioners in the past too. Some people say they can be advantageous compared to psychiatrists in some cases. The other thing I wanted to talk to you about is this suicide attempt went down in a very public kind of way. What type of job were you working at the time, and how, like, what was that like? Because that's a very like, it's not like you were able to hide it when
No,
this
true.
events took
So
place.
I was working at Dunkin' Donuts.
Okay.
Even though it was behind the dumpster, so it was these two big dumpsters, so actually nobody could see me because it was behind the woods. But what I did was deemed by the police a public disturbance.
Okay.
And actually, because it was deemed a public disturbance, my insurance wouldn't pay for the ambulance ride. I had to pay for the ambulance ride to get to the hospital.
By this time in the conversation, as I began to understand more of the gravity of the situations that Dionna had recently been in, I also recognized that she was still taking time to process the events. Here, she talks through her reactions to the December 2021 hospitalization.
Looking back on it, it's not my various fond moment. Based on what I felt, I do not regret it. When I think about it, I don't really know, because now those 5 hours passed. It was about like 5:30 at night, and I was like drained. I was completely tired. There was throw up on me. I was like, just get me to the hospital. Like, I don't care anymore. Like, I'm so sick.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm walking back. So this was the plan. I was gonna walk back into the store.
Okay.
And tell who was ever working, look, I'm sorry for what I texted you, but I need help. So as I was walking back into the store, my sister's fiance found me, and he was going to drive me to the ER, but the cop showed up, and then, they started asking questions, and I just remember blacking in and out. But the whole situation was probably So from that experience, I've attempted suicide 2 other times this year, in January and in February,
Wow.
and was
Okay.
hospitalized.
When Dionna revealed that she had actually experienced 2 more suicide attempts between December 2021 and March 2022, the time of the recording, my jaw nearly hit the floor.
So because of it was what I did on December was in public.
Mm-hmm.
The next 2 attempts that I did, the police were involved. They looked at what I did as attention seeking. They were more concerned about like other people's safety and the public safety than mine.
I always provide guests with a basic interview guide prior to the recording that includes a list of example questions. Dionna had prepared detailed responses for a couple of these questions in advance, and she reads for us from her notes.
Like that goes back to like one of your questions you asked, like what was the craziest experience you've had with mental illness?
Yeah.
Because of that one experience, I'm afraid, like if I ever attempt again, that all of my attempts will now be based on attention seeking. That's what the police will deem it as, just because of one public attempt. But it's just crazy how so on January 17th, 2022, I quit my job at Dunkin', and I attempted suicide. I didn't actually do anything, but I had a weapon on me. I had a butcher knife on me, but I wasn't going to hurt anyone else but me. Um, but my APR, my psychiatric nurse practitioner, called 911 on me. I was sent to the hospital.
Yeah.
Now the police, because it was deemed a threat, went to my house, took DNA, took my journals, found evidence, and they collected all this evidence because I was on some watch. It was kind of like eye-opening to me how like this could happen when like I've never threatened anyone else in my life. Um, Sometimes it's like hard to like look back on it, but I'm honestly glad it's just like all past me now, and I'm just looking forward to the future. But it's crazy how mental illness is incidents or deemed from the public. Like that first incident in December, my coworkers were like, "Oh, we're here for you, we
Yeah.
love you, and then like the next time, I don't blame anyone, like I get it, but like in January I reached out to some few people and no one answered me, but like I understand things happen. But and then, some people were like, we're all just sick of this, get over it. But it's like, when you live with a mental illness, like you live with this every day, you can't just get over it. It's just it's just something you have to deal with and like learn to live with and control and take care of. You don't just get over it and move on with it.
Right. Wise words for sure. Circling back to that first incident in December, what were you doing in the intervening 5 hours between when you took the medication and the EMTs found you or the police found you?
So basically, for like the first 3 hours, I was literally walking back and forth with music on in my ears, like walking around like happy, like I'm dying, this is great. I'm finally gonna die. I deserve to die. It's gonna make everyone happy. And then the throwing up started happening, and I became extremely sick throwing up. I really had to use the bathroom. I couldn't urinate because of all the pills that I just took.
Oh my
I was in
gosh.
pain. I was just laying on the floor. I was like, I remember blacking out for maybe like about an hour or so. And that's when I got up, looked at the time. It was like about 4:35. And I was like, there just came a point where it was like, okay, I can't do this anymore. Like, I need to get help, blah, 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 blah. And I started walking.
So was this like 4:30 or 5 in the morning, or was
No,
it
this was
after your
at night.
okay, so after your shift at Dunkin' Donuts? And when so when you actually returned to work after this incident, because you said you had worked there a little while after that, what was the reaction toward you from your coworkers?
So everything was positive, everything was fine. People were just like, "Oh, I'm glad you're feeling better." But then when I started talking to some of like my close coworkers, they really told me like what went down. They were like, "You fucked up everyone's day." We were all worried about you and all this other stuff. And I'm like, I'm honestly sorry. And um that made me open up to some of these people because they didn't know about the diagnosis that I had and like why I did what I did. um and they were like, you have nothing to be ashamed of. I became close to them. So nothing was really too stigmatizing. Actually, I was surprised at my district manager about how open he was, and he was like, like, I need you. Like, throughout that whole time when I was in the back of the dumpster, he was like calling me. He was the one who actually called. He reported me missing, and
Wow.
he told me, like, you're my best employee. Like, I need you. Like, everything's gonna be okay. Like, so it was actually very supportive. That was honestly, all of their reactions was very shocking to me, but in a positive way. So nothing too stigmatizing, which was good. That doesn't mean I haven't dealt with stigmatizing in my life. I have, but well, the next incident that I just talked about in January, I've dealt with some stigmatizing words, but I think there's stigma in every illness, but we just have to learn to move past it.
Yeah, well, you were kind of alluding to like there even being that stigma from people after you learned more from your closer coworkers. They said you had fucked up their day or whatever. So did you feel like in retrospect their words were kind of shallow, or do you feel like some of the people really wanted to support you, whereas others were kind of just like going through the motions and trying to figure out, the quote unquote right things to say?
True. I feel that both way. I feel like honestly now looking back, that's just some people, like, because some people were like from like older generation who don't really understand mental illness. So like, to me, I felt like they were just trying to find the right words to say. Maybe they didn't really know what to say. But it did make me feel like immensely bad when like they were like, you fucked up, our day. That was never the plan. Like, it was never the plan to make anyone feel bad. I was sitting there like happy. Everyone's gonna be so happy. Meanwhile, obviously that wasn't the what happened. But looking back, it just makes me realize how like for other people's perspectives in times of need, I don't think people really know what to say to people who are like having the moments that I was in.
Mhm.
And maybe that makes me understand more and not get so upset. Like, oh, we're here for you. I support you. I'm so sorry about what happened, et cetera, et cetera. Um,
So what would you say to someone who was in your situation in that moment, returning after a suicide attempt and just kind of trying to get your feedback under you? At this point, Dionna pulled out a page from her notes and read from it.
so I would probably say something along the lines that so just not like what I went through or maybe like everyone, like So I'd probably tell them to like don't ever give up. I promise you there is hope. Someone, me, I care, and I want you to live and have a worthwhile life. Mental illness is hard. Trust me, I know what we all get through it. The bad times in between, there will be good. I believe in you. Anyone struggling can talk to me. Seriously, I will listen to you. Mental illness is hard, but if you have a heart and a soul that nourishes you and that is yours and loves you, stay here. It will get better. Know that the hardest efforts that you make to end your life and the consequences that you seek from them don't determine who you are as a person. And I know that's like a weird saying to say, but basically that means that is like what I went through. Like that doesn't define who you are.
You're not like defined by your lowest
Yeah,
moments.
because that's something that I've struggled with a lot in the past months is trying to separate what I've done and who I am as a person. Because you
Yeah.
have to realize that, you were sick. That wasn't really you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's the illness.
Yeah.
So you said that there had been something else that happened in February. Was that an additional attempt on your own life, or?
Yes. So
Wow. Okay.
yeah. So basically the attempts that I've had throughout my whole entire life, so basically I fantasize about suicide. It's this weird like OCD thing, whereas like normal OCD people like fantasize about like cleaning and cleanliness and perfectionist. But no, I fantasize about death and suicide. It's very strange, it's very out of the ordinary. But but it was situational. So basically, I was manic. I wasn't sleeping for 5 days. And then basically, I started drinking all this wine in my house, and someone found out and they're like, why did you drink all the wine? And I was like, I don't know, it was there. And then they basically said to me that I ruined their life and that, all these things I caused all these people, and I've hurt all these people from all the past suicide attempts and all with the police and all this stuff. And I just remember sitting in my room like crying, like I want out, I don't want to do this anymore. So it was very impulsive, very impulsive. I just made the decision that I would go to the hospital, move out, start a new life. Not attempting suicide or anything, but the next morning I woke up. Now this is the same morning I had an appointment for an intensive outpatient program to, help me get better and move on with my life and get me back on my feet from the last suicide attempt. And instead I found these pills and I overdosed on Midol, which is basically what you take for your period. It has caffeine and Tylenol in it. And I packed a bag and I started walking, and then I got sick and I texted my psychiatric nurse practitioner what I did, and then she called 911 on me. And I went to the hospital, was in the ICU for 2 days, and then was hospitalized for 2 weeks. That one I do regret because it was just so impulsive.
Keep in mind here that the attempt Dionna is referring to occurred less than 4 weeks before the time of the recording.
From that last attempt, things have gotten better. I'm way more stable. Things are looking up after not being employed since January, after not going to school for a year due to hospitalizations and being mentally unstable. I now have job interviews. I'm going back to school in May. I'm getting sleep. I'm not having such up and downs in my moods. And I don't obsess, which is crazy because I haven't felt this way since I was 12. Obsess over suicide. That's a big one for me.
Do you think that is like a benefit of new medications that you're on, or working with a therapist, or anything else in your
Both.
life? Okay.
Both.
Do you want to talk a little bit about the medications that you're taking?
Sure. So I'm on a bunch of medications. So
Yeah.
I'm on lithium, and lithium, I know what everyone says, it either works or it doesn't work for you, but lithium has honestly taken away my suicidal thoughts, like the intensity of it.
Yeah.
I just started Valar, which has helped my mania completely and has made me sleep. I'm on Latuda, but I've been on that since a year ago, but I'm waving off that and being put on Seroquel just because some of the side effects of Latuda gives me stomach problems. Yeah, that's all I'm on right now. So I'm on mood stabilizers and antipsychotics.
How long have you been on that regimen for? Because I mean, if we're talking February, it's March 22nd at the time of
Okay,
this
so I've been
recording.
on lithium since January.
Okay.
I've been on Valar for about 3 weeks.
Yeah.
Um, I've been on Latuda since January. I've been on other stuff. So throughout my life, I've been on medication since 2020. I've been on antidepressants, which never worked for me and made me manic.
Mm-hmm.
I was on Lexapro and Prozac. And then I was on some antipsychotics. I was on Abilify, which made me gain a lot of weight. I was on clozapine, which made me have very bad tremors. I was on Respirol, that gave me tardive dyskinesia. I was also on Depakote, which made me throw up. And I was on Wellbutrin, which just didn't give us the full effects.
Yeah. Yeah, it takes a very long time of experimenting with different cocktails of medication before you find one that is effective for you personally, because it is different for everybody. You mentioned that Risperdal was causing tardive dyskinesia. Do you want to explain for the audience what tardive dyskinesia, or TD, is?
Yeah, so basically it was the worst 24 hours experience of my life. So basically what happened was sometimes the hospital medicates you a little too much.
Mm-hmm.
So I was on 2 of a high dose of Respirol.
Yeah.
Now, see, this is a warning for all antipsychotics because they affect the neurotransmitter dopamine instead of serotonin. Too much of dopamine can affect your central nervous system, and you can basically have uncontrollable body movements. And uncontrollable body movements, I mean, you can't sit still. You're drooling.
Mm-hmm.
Your lips are smuckering. You're blinking fast. I mean, I literally spent the whole night. I couldn't sit still. My legs felt like they were moving, but you can't sit still, and I kept walking backwards because I couldn't stop. Like, it was like my whole central nervous system was depressed. What did get rid of it though was Benadryl. But gladly it all went away when I stopped taking the medication, because sometimes when you experience TD, the symptoms become permanent.
Yeah. So, like for people who don't know, in the crowd and the audience, when you get placed in a psych ward, sometimes what they'll do is they'll put you on like a very abnormally high dose of an antipsychotic such as Risperdal. Since you're in a medically controlled environment, they'll put you on like a way higher dose than what someone would normally take in their day-to-day life. So it sounds like they hit you with a pretty high dose of Risperdal during your hospitalization experience, and they realized that that was causing really dangerous side effects for you.
Yes, like, but it wasn't until like literally, of course, right after I got discharged, and then I had to go to the ER because I had these symptoms.
Wow. So what, like, you've had a couple of very recent hospitalization experiences. What was your inpatient treatment like? Did you feel like it helped you? Did it hurt things? What were your overall reactions to your experience? Also, was it at the same hospital each time?
Okay, so I've been to two different hospitals. So one of them, my heart goes out to Yale. In New Haven. That's usually the hospital that I've always gone to. Um, their staff has just been amazing. They have care and supportive staff, which is honestly the backbone of psychiatric hospitals. I've also been to other hospitals which are different and have not every psychiatric hospital is the same as the other. Everything is different. If you can and you're in a crisis, I know it's a crisis, so you obviously kind of can't make that decision. But if you can, I would advise you to go to the hospital that you're most comfortable with. It's very hard to get transferred out once you're in one. So my experiences with psychiatric hospitals have been good, actually. Um, I don't mind them. I just mind the whole like the items you can bring and what you can and can't wear, like the
Yeah.
and it's basically a form of elementary school kind of. I mean,
Yeah.
you can only do so much and there's so many rules and you have to go to group therapy, otherwise you won't be discharged, and you have to talk to the doctor and you
Yeah.
have to take your meds and you have to go to, you can't go out of your room at a certain time, you have to go to bed at this certain time. But the one thing I like about psychiatric hospitals is the people you meet. Yes, sometimes when I go to psychiatric, I'm scared of, you never know what's going to happen or the people you're going to meet. Once you start connecting with people and talking to people, that's the greatest aspect of a psychiatric hospital, opening up to people and realizing that even though you may have different diagnoses and sometimes people will, they connect in ways that you can't imagine, or they may relate or know what you're going through, and you just bond with someone like you never have before, and unlike any people you have on the outside world. Because that's one thing that I can say about psychiatric hospitals: people understand what you're going through, and usually people won't judge you. But I've gotten switched on multiple meds there. That's how I started medication from psychiatric hospitals. I've in September of 2021, I started ECT from psychiatric hospitals, which was yes, scary, but overall that was one thing besides the lithium that took away my suicidal thoughts.
Yeah, ECT is electroconvulsive therapy.
Yes. I just wish, well, the one thing I wish about psychiatric hospitals is that the groups were more effective.
Yeah.
That's the biggest downfall, I believe, that are psychiatric hospitals, because the groups are more like generalized and like mindfulness and like, not to like beat down mindfulness, but mindfulness does not work for me. And it's just like, I think every patient should have more one-on-one therapy with a psychiatrist or doctor or social worker than like
Right.
instead of 10 minutes a day. But I get when you have a psychiatric hospital full of like 25 patients, that's like kind of hard to do.
Yeah. It's weird because I think there's a lot of perception that like if you were in a psychiatric hospital, then you would just be in like constant like therapy and like talking to doctors, but it really isn't like that. It's like you meet with the psychiatrist maybe for Like in my own case, just speaking from my own experience, it's like I was in the hospital for about a week and I spoke to a doctor maybe for a combined total of 30 minutes throughout like the 5 days that I was there. And they would have group therapy, but the therapists who were leading the group, one therapist in particular, they didn't really know what they were doing. They weren't good at moderating a group therapy session. So there's that component to things. You can just have bad therapists in general, or there can be what you're talking about, where there might be an individual who needs more one-on-one counseling and not necessarily like a big group setting or session.
No, I completely agree with that. Sometimes I think like I wish like it like treatment was more individualized for like one person, because when you do a therapy session outside of the hospital, it's at least 45 minutes to a session. Meanwhile, when you're in crisis critical care, it's only like 10 minutes. When I was in the hospital in January, no lie, my doctor asked me how my day was. I was like, it's going good. And she was like, okay, I'll see you tomorrow. I was like, what?
No follow-up to that,
You
like.
know, right? I was
And
like, okay.
it's also like, how do you think my day is going? I'm fucking here right now. Like, come on.
Right, literally. And then I called to my mom. I was like, what the fuck? I literally talked to the doctor for 5 minutes. She's like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
I'm calling. This is ridiculous.
At this point in the conversation, Dionna's tone suddenly shifts as she talks about how she was treated by the doctor at the hospital. She fights back tears.
And it's just like I don't understand, like, especially when you're in a psychiatric hospital, like, and everything is based on emotions, how you're doing, and you're a doctor, that's what you do for a living. How could you just ask someone, how are they, and believe that I'm good, and then be like, okay, see you tomorrow? Like, don't you want some follow-up questions?
Mm-hmm. Some more compassion and genuine
Yeah.
interest in your well-being. And those, like inpatient hospitalization, the costs vary based on different things, but you're generally talking about around $1,000 a day for inpatient treatment, right?
Yeah, I've actually unfortunately, never had to deal with having to pay it out of pocket, only because insurance pays for it.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, I would say hospitalization is very expensive, which I don't think is right. Well, I do know a slight fact from when I was hospitalized in December, that hospitalization I was talking about, I had to pay for the ambulance ride, and that was $500 out of pocket. So
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's not cheap to be mentally ill and in
no.
need of services. I'm glad your insurance covers it, though.
Yeah, thank God.
Yeah.
I'm 24.
Mm-hmm.
So until I'm 26, I'm on my mom's insurance. So I don't know what I'm going to do when I'm 26. Hopefully I get some insurance, because otherwise my life is going to go secretly downhill, because therapy is like $200 a session, and I literally base my life, like, I have such a strong connection with my APRN, and I look forward to her sessions every week. And I truly can honestly say that I tell her everything. And I want that for every single person who is listening, to find someone that they can tell everything to, because it honestly makes the world such a better place for you to live in. To be able to confine your most inner thoughts. And like without that, like, I'd be struggling a lot more. And with the fears, in December, having that fear, like I didn't know that. So my mom used my own money to like pay for the hospital, the ambulance to come and get me. But like, imagine like not knowing that, and like coming out from a hospital stay and like getting the bill in the mail of like thousands, millions of dollars that you have to pay from insurance. Like, that's awful. You're just gonna make someone more suicidal. Like, how in America, or even not even just in America, like how in the world is that like okay? Like it's just so like there has to be like, I don't know if you've ever seen Charlie Brown and like Lucy goes, or the one with the dark hair that's always mocking Charlie Brown, and she's like psychiatric help 5 cents on the street. Like, I want to do that because like, but like officially like accurately do it. Like we need that in like the world, like free healthcare, free mental and emotional and physical healthcare that like is like good. Because it's just like, it's just basic like human needs. Like we all need that. And it's scary like to live without that.
It is scary. There's all sorts of issues with the healthcare system in the United States and in other places throughout the world. It's extremely expensive for people who have chronic health conditions, including psychiatric health conditions. I know that for me personally, I have a private therapist, and it's about $200 a session, like you said. So I'm spending thousands of dollars each year on that out of pocket, and it's not cheap. Now we begin to focus more on the different types of help and resources that have worked for Dionna over the last couple of years. We talk about how long she's been stable for and what her outlook on the future is. So how long have you been feeling stable for now?
So about like 2 weeks. I know it's a short period of time, but I can honestly say in a very long time. I can say in the first time in about a good 2 years. So in the last 2 years since 2020, I've been hospitalized 9 times.
Wow.
I can honestly see that things are looking up, and like I'm generally like, for me as a person, I've never said the word, oh, I'm happy, because I just feel like that's just not who I am. But I'm stable, I'm well, and I don't think I would be like this without the help of medications and therapy. And it honestly saved lives, and it's just insane because like 3 months ago, 2 months ago, a month ago, like I was in such like bad shape, and like, that's what everyone was saying to me. Usually every 6 months I attempt suicide, but I was even making it 6 months. I was making it like less than 3 weeks I would attempt suicide again. And now like it's been more than a month that I've gone without attempting suicide. So
that's incredible. So it sounds like you're in the process of turning over a new leaf, sort of. You've got a brighter outlook now. You feel like you're on the right combination of medication. You said you have a great nurse practitioner who you work with. What made you feel comfortable opening up to them in such a raw way?
So actually, for the first 6 months I was seeing her. So the only reason why I started seeing her was because I needed someone to take my meds, and I couldn't do my primary care doctor. So I found her on psychology.com today.
For anyone who's wondering, Dionna is referencing psychologytoday.com, an excellent online resource in the United States for finding doctors, therapists, and nurse practitioners in your area. I also strongly recommend this tool if you're looking for new mental health care providers.
From my old therapist that I was seeing, she was like, you don't really have to, tell this person anything. You can just tell them, you're great, you're fine, and then that's it. So my APRN would literally ask me, how are you today? Is everything good? How's the meds? I'd be like, yeah, everything's great, everything's fine. And then we'd end the session. And literally on one of those times. So I was literally, so in July of 2020, we had a session together and she's like, "Hi, how was everything?" And I'm like, "Great." And she's like, "That's good." And I'm like, "Yeah, I'll see you, next month." And 20 minutes later, I attempted suicide and
Oh my
she had no
God.
idea. And it's like, and then finally last April, it was April 2nd, 2021. And just things were going out of control. And I was like, I can't do this anymore. I need therapy. So I finally confessed to my APR and everything. I told her my whole entire life story. And she was just like, "Yeah, it sounds like you could have bipolar disorder. And, the more you tell me the things about your life, the more I can help you control your symptoms and get you the help that you need." And it's just like, it was her honesty about, like, she wasn't judgmental, she was well thought, listening, and she understood, like, I've had a therapist most of my childhood and teen years who was more like a friend to me, who was there for me but wouldn't offer any, like, real help to me to anything. And my psychiatric nurse practitioner, she was more like a professional friend to me.
Mm.
She could listen to me, care for me, comfort me in times of need, but also give me that psychiatric knowledge about illnesses, disorders, getting help, resources, things that, a therapist differs from a friend. And that's what really made me want to open up to her. And also, there are some therapists who are honestly afraid because, of the mandated reporter. If you mention the word suicide, they will literally hospitalize you. And even if you're not actively suicidal. Now, I had a therapist who was like that. Like, I couldn't even talk about my suicidal thoughts. So I had to lie to her every time I saw her so I wouldn't get hospitalized. Meanwhile, with my therapist, as long as I'm safe and I'm not planning to, jump off a bridge, the night that I leave her office or talk to her,
Mhm.
or, I talk to her or get help or go to the hospital or tell her, when I'm allowed to talk about my suicidal thoughts in a non-comfortable disclosure way in a safe setting. And that's truly what has helped me the most because, when we think of the word suicide, most people freak out and like dial 911, which,
Mhm.
is what you sort of should do. But first, you should hear the person out first.
Yeah. Well, I'm so glad to hear that you have a strong relationship with your nurse practitioner and that you feel like you can trust her and that she's able to provide a better quality of care to you now.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we're coming up on about 1 hour, so I just wanted to check in and ask if there's anything else you wanted to discuss that we haven't touched on. I mean, you've really shared a whole lot throughout the course of this recording, and my heart really goes out to you for being so open and honest. And I just wanted to ask if there was anything else that you'd like to touch on. Dionna pulls out her notes for a final time and reads her advice for friends and family members of those living with mental illness. I really liked what she had to say.
I think that there's just one thing, like, so to anyone who has a friend or family member of someone who has a mental illness. Now, this has touched me personally because I have sisters and family members, and they just never know the right thing to say. But honestly, I believe it's because they don't know what to say. So I'm gonna take it from the heart and just say this. Take them seriously, listen to them, and I say this in all caps, non-judgmentally. No side comments either. They need your support and love. Without it, they could die. I know it's exhausting and hard to deal with it, but just try to be as nicely and calm with them, please. Even when they do things you don't approve of or say mean things, they don't mean it. It's just their illness projecting. Take care of yourself too, though. They need you.
It's very powerful. Do you feel like you have those types of people in your life right now?
I can honestly say I have one person in my life, so I have at least two people in my life who I can like that are friends, and like one family that I can tell everything to based on like mental illness, and that's great. Growing up I didn't, but having that one person, at least one person that you can talk to non-judgmentally, can save a life, and it can make you feel like you're not alone. And I think every single person needs that one person.
Yeah, I agree. I think community, having non-judgmental support, having friends and family who you can rely on, or just some sort of trusted person in your life, those are definitely keys to strong mental health. You said that you like to do art, you like to do writing. Do you have any projects you're working on that you like to plug, or any social media, anything like that that you'd like to share with the audience?
Yeah, so I have a blog that I haven't, so right now I'm writing an article about growing up with bipolar depression, mental illness, suicidality, stigma, the heartache of not knowing what's wrong with you and having to get help trying to live and surviving, and how connection with others save lives. It's basically my whole life story, and how, advocacy. So it's not published yet, but I'm planning to within the next week publish it. So I have a blog. There's nothing really published yet. It's just a website right now with nothing on it. But
What's it called?
It's called thinkermind.wixsite.com/mind of own.
Very cool. I'll be sure to put that in the episode description so people can check that out. This podcast is not going to be up for another couple of weeks. So by that time, your website may be active and people might be able to check it out right away. Well, I just wanted to thank you so much for coming on. I know that this isn't easy stuff to talk about, and it really does take a lot of courage to open up in the way that you have. So just thank you for being so real. And, I really do wish you all of the best in the future. I hope your future looks bright and peaceful and tranquil, and that you continue getting the help and resources that you need.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure doing this. I'm so glad I found your podcast.
I'm so glad that we were able to have you on. Thanks.
You're welcome.
That was a heavy episode. 9 hospitalizations and a suicide attempt nearly every 6 months. Sometimes even more than that. But things are looking up for Dionna. She's working with a great nurse practitioner and taking a new regimen of medication to help with her symptoms. She's even working toward becoming a psychologist herself. Some of Dionna's words really stuck with me. I'd like to read a quote from her that really resonated. She said, "Mental illness is hard, but if you have a heart and a soul that nourishes you and that is yours and loves you, stay here and it will get better." Dionna's blog is out now. Check the show notes for the link so you can view her art and writing. Dionna is also on Twitter at Peepweezer, PeepWeezer. As always, thanks for joining me. My name is Hunter Keegan. I'm on Twitter at HHKeegan. Bipolar Recorder is on Twitter at Bipolar Recorder. Be sure to check out our social media and web pages for cool merch and other ways to support the show. Help us keep this show running and get the word out about mental health. So, with all of that said, have a great day, evening, or night, wherever you are. Recorder is a listener-supported show. To help keep the show running, consider checking out our Patreon page.
Unless otherwise stated, the hosts and guests on Bipolar Recorder are not licensed mental health professionals. Bipolar Recorder is not a substitute for therapy or professional medical intervention. If you are having a mental health crisis, please contact your local emergency services.